Howdy. This week we're looking at The Lord is My Shepherd. And today we have a particularly poignant situation to discuss it in light of. We just got through here in Houston Hurricane Laura. Now, with that, we were very scared coming into it that it was going to be very similar to Hurricane Harvey that we had 3 years ago. Now, as of now, Hurricane Laura has passed along the Texas Louisiana border and has been traveling upward. But what we see then is that here in Houston, we were doing some evacuations on the south side, over near Galveston and the like, but we don't have any confirmed deaths at this moment. There's one unconfirmed death potentially. And what we see though is that a lot of us are just very grateful right now that things didn't end up getting worse than they did. The hurricane was a Category 4, but then upon hitting land, ended up switching to a Category 2. And a lot of people have been very grateful that we only had winds, a lot of rain in certain areas, but not necessarily the kind of destruction that we saw 3 years ago with Harvey. But there are going to be a lot of people that are suffering and struggling on the east side of Texas and the west side of Louisiana. Now, with that, what we wanted to be able to ask is this question: what does it mean for the Lord to be my shepherd, even when these things are happening? See, oftentimes whenever we think about the Lord is my shepherd, we think about the still waters or the green pastures. We don't think about the rod and the staff, and we don't think about the valley of the shadow of death. See, there are some circumstances that we go through that are just terrible, and knowing God, having trust in Him, doesn't stop us from going through terrible circumstances. And at the same time, there are some things that happen that are meant to be a lesson for us. Not necessarily every terrible circumstance is some sort of a punishment to us, but there are times whenever we are meant to learn things, whenever we're meant to experience something that shows us, hey, this is not the best way to do it. For example, there are a lot of issues that Houston as a city is facing that need to be changed, need to be dealt with, because we realize that we do not have everything figured out in how to deal with a storm like this. There are some things we did do better versus Harvey, versus previous storms, Rita, for example. But at the same time, there are still lessons to be learned from this. And at the same time, we also have to ask this question of, if the Lord is our shepherd but doesn't keep us away from harm, then what is the point of the Lord being our shepherd? And that's the thing, is that a lot of times, people will think about, well, God doesn't stop bad things from happening to good people, so why should I even believe in God? The thing is that with this is that the Lord being our shepherd is not about which circumstances we're led into, but rather asking a question about how do we respond to them. Do we end up reacting to our fear with anger, with hatred, causing fear in others? Do we end up panicking? Do we end up doing things that are going to be harmful to ourselves or our neighbors in the future? Do we end up doing things that are selfish, self-centered, things that we wouldn't consider doing under normal circumstances? Or even things that if we were to pause and take a look at ourselves from the outside, we would be very shocked to see how we've been reacting. And even on top of that, the fact that many of us haven't had to go through the destruction from this hurricane, that doesn't necessarily mean that therefore we're not going to go and help others with cleanup. The Lord being our shepherd, now we have to ask this question: how are we going to step up to help them? We don't have to go through this suffering, but there are many who do. So how will this change our actions so that we then become the people who are going to bring about hope and transformation and change for others? So with this, when we think about the Lord as my shepherd, we're not thinking about God leading us either into good pastures or terrible places, because the truth is that we're going to end up seeing all of the above. And on top of that, there are times when we are meant to learn lessons from what we experience. Not everything is about us personally, but there are times when we can learn things from what we go through. But on top of that, now we ask this question of, how is it that all these things are meant to transform us? That we are meant to change and become the people that God desires us to be, the people that we should want to be. And so with that then, if the Lord is our shepherd, it's not a question of where is it that we're going, but the question is, who is it that we become as we're journeying through those areas?